It is officially Senior Bowl week, and we have a brand new first round mock draft for you. I am flying to Mobile, and therefore will not be able to do the show live, but we have something great for you today. All 32 picks, and then talking about what positions you need to look for in the Senior Bowl. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, is producer Dave. And we're recording this on Saturday afternoon to make sure that you guys get your normal Monday night fix, because I am going to be in midst of traveling to Mobile. And while you're watching this, I just might be at Buc-ee's on the way, because luckily there's one in between Pensacola and Mobile because it's only an hour drive. Dave, it's going to be a really fun week down in Mobile, and there's some interesting kind of position groups to look at. Obviously, the Vikings are going to be looking probably heavy at cornerback. They should be looking heavy at linebacker, defensive line, and safety, which there's a very good safety group down there. But the one area where I think I'm going to be the most interested to kind of pay attention is the skill positions. I believe it was Ben Lieber on KFan Friday morning on the Power Trip Morning Show said that he expects the Vikings to take a skill position player or like an offensive player in the first round, which it's so far out to really know what the draft strategy is going to be, which is why I like doing these mock drafts now. And then also after like the bulk of free agencies happened, because you can kind of compare and contrast. Okay, what is the potential for the Minnesota Vikings to go through the offseason? How are they going to attack fixing their roster versus what are they actually doing to fix their roster? They are two different things. And that in itself is a really important distinction, because what they choose to do versus what they should do aren't often the same, because there's so many different variables that go through it. Just 2 years ago, the Vikings may not have gotten Andrew Van Ginkel because they wanted Christian Wilkins and they had a massive offer on the table for him. Wilkins ends up going to the Las Vegas Raiders, and now he's a free agent because they had a dispute with his foot injury. So those things end up really mattering in the course of these conversations, because what you plan to do isn't always what you are going to do, because there are 31 other teams that also may want the exact same player in the exact same idea that you do, and that ends up complicating things. So having kind of an open mind throughout this process, looking at different options, is kind of what these mock drafts are about. Hey, what happens if this guy goes here? What happens if the Vikings take this player? I just did a 3-round mock draft for A to Z Sports, where the only thing I did was pick players who I thought could contribute on day one, because this regime understands that they need to win. And with Brian Flores returning, he has not shown a willingness to play young players. And it's because this defense is relatively complicated, and having a baseline knowledge of all the little nuances that you need to have and the intelligence to pass off coverages and be able to disguise things, especially in the secondary, has, I think, played a huge role in how this defense has been constructed. And we see it as, oh, this defense is old. This defense needs an injection of youth. And I've said that too, and I do believe it. But I don't know if the Vikings want to do that in the same way that we do, because of all the things I just said. Flores wants to play veterans. He wants to play guys he can trust to handle this kind of intelligence load that you need to have to play in this defense. Does that mean that young players can't play in this defense? No. But we've seen a lack of patience with young talent on this team. We've seen it on offense and we've seen it on defense, especially in the trenches. Dallas Turner did not get a ton of run in his rookie season. I personally point that out to the fact that Andrew Van Ginkel was an All-Pro and Grenard was like 5 votes away from being a second-team All-Pro. Are you really going to take those guys out to get Turner a few more snaps? Probably not. But they could have still found a way to use him more, and I think they didn't because of his lack of experience, and they wanted to just take it slow with him, which, you know what? It worked out pretty well because Turner was good this year. And next year, he has a chance to really be great because he's now, hey, I got my baseline core strength up. That was the focus last year. I have a baseline that is significantly higher than it was coming into the league and in my rookie season. So now I can develop things that are going to elevate me to the next level instead of just making me a solid foundational player. And that's why year 3, I think Turner can take that next step. But other than Turner, you have Jalen Redmond, who just shocked everybody, but Redmond's like 25 years old. He was a long-term starter for the Oklahoma Sooners. And then he came in, he was undrafted, went to Carolina, but then he played with the Arlington Renegades. And in my opinion, it is easier to scout in the UFL and the CFL than it is in college football. And the reason being is the talent level is much more even and balanced versus college football. You may be a 5-star edge rusher, but you're playing a future Lowe's general manager opposite of you. That's not something that's going to be easy to determine how well it's going to translate to league. But if you dominate a professional league, then that's going to give you, hey, all those offensive linemen are probably like practice squad caliber. And if you just dominate the practice squad guys, hey, I have something I can build on for the NFL, which is one of the reasons why I'm so high on the idea of what Jalen Hutchings can be, especially after how well they maximize Jalen Redmond, because they're very similar players. So all of these exercises to kind of combine are really important to understand, hey, what are the different directions? And now that we know Flores is about 99% returning, because as much as I think he should get the Steelers job, at this point, it feels unlikely that he's going to get the Steelers job because of the inclusion of Mike McCarthy, which would be a very weird Steelers hire. And Chris Shula
is the one that's leading.
And I was about to say that Shula feels like he's in the driver's seat here. And by the time you watch this, he may have already been hired, but they can't talk to him again until Monday because it's NFC Championship game week. The way coaches are held back during the course of this hiring cycle because they are on playoff teams is very frustrating for the teams hiring, but they're trying to make it as fair as possible for the teams who are still trying to win a Super Bowl. So you don't have a coach having like 4 interviews in 2 days and all of a sudden their responsibilities go kaput in the building, which, look, that is more important than getting a head coaching job. Doing the job that you currently have to make sure that, hey, you try and win a damn Super Bowl. But we want to look at every possible option. And I do think even if Jordan Addison stays, they pick up his 5th-year option, which I think if they don't, it's stupid because what he brings to the table from a talent perspective alone is through the roof, especially what he does for Justin Jefferson. And the majority of the issues that we saw on the field this year were a quarterback issue. The wide receivers weren't as good as they normally are, but I think we expect them to be gods when they are still human beings. So there's a bevy of different reasons why things didn't work out, but I put the majority of it on the quarterback position. And Addison, he's done some dumb things, but I think we need to remember 2 things. One, he's 23 years old. He's still learning how to be an adult. I'm 36. I didn't feel like I was fully ingrained and like really mature until I was about 27, 28. You know, there are levels to it, but we also have to remember he hasn't done anything violent. He hasn't done anything next level that says, hey, this guy can absolutely not be trusted. It's a bunch of serious but relatively minor things that hopefully, because he's still a young person, he can grow out of. So you may disagree with that, and I respect it. But from my perspective, he's still learning how to be an adult. And that's okay. Now we have to just keep him on the straight and narrow. And if you can do that, I think that this is a guy that's a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL or just outside of that group because there's a lot of wide receiver talent in the league. And if there's one position that you could replace, theoretically, it's like a wide receiver too, because you can probably get one in the first round if you were to be able to get a first round pick for him. And we talked on Thursday's show about the rumor from Grant Cohn of Sports Illustrated saying, hey, what about a Jordan Addison trade to the San Francisco 49ers? And then he also mentioned the Buffalo Bills. What about the New England Patriots if they want to get involved? There are teams who desperately need wide receiver. Maybe the Browns would offer their second first-round pick, which I think is 26. Sorry, it's pick 24. Maybe they offer 24 so they can get Addison, who would be a bona fide number one for them in Cleveland. There's a lot of different options here. And if they choose to keep Addison, I think wide receiver can still be in play because Jalen Naylor probably goes bye-bye. Ty Felton, is he a guy you can trust? I don't know. I don't think you can go into this season thinking, hey, this is my guaranteed wide receiver 3. I think you need to at least have competition for that spot. And that's why re-signing a Jalen Naylor is probably on the table for what this team wants long-term. But it also could mean you take a wide receiver in round 1, and then you have flexibility with Jordan Addison. If he breaks out, then maybe you trade him after the season, and then, hey, now you have a guy ready to slide in. But you're also maximizing your second-year starting quarterback. Now, McCarthy's in his third year, but you have to find a way to make his life as easy as possible. And you have a pretty solid offensive line when healthy. And that's the key part, when healthy. And if you get a little bit of improvement with the offensive line coach hire, there's been discussion already about Frank Smith from the Miami Dolphins, who was the offensive coordinator. Before that, I believe he might have been an offensive line coach for the Chargers. I can't remember the team, but he's very well respected. And if you get that kind of dynamic run game, which they ran in Miami, and you start to implement some of those things in Minnesota, maybe you're able to elevate and take the next step. The key is this draft could be about McCarthy more than it is about the long-term future of the entire team. Because if you have Brian Flores, he is constantly proven he can take chicken salad and turn it into a filet mignon. Every time. It doesn't matter how void the roster seems to be of talent. He maximizes what he has, and he makes adjustments based on his roster. So if you just maybe spend your free agent dollars taking care of fortifying the defense, getting another linebacker, getting a safety, getting another corner so you have more than just 2 on the roster that are worthy of playing snaps. Now all of a sudden you're cooking with gas, and then you can really spend these high draft picks fortifying positions that you know you're going to play right away. And that might have to be the mentality for O'Connell and Kwesi, because their jobs could be on the line. And I don't think O'Connell is nearly on the hot seat as much as Kwesi is, because O'Connell is so loved in that building. And everything I hear is that he's loved and he's got a lot of pull. I don't think that his job is nearly under fire as much as Kwesi's is, especially because a couple things here and there, the Vikings win the division. And it's pretty close, right? So I think fortifying positions like, hey, let's get another stud wide receiver in here. Let's get a third tight end that can eventually take over for TJ Hawkinson. Maybe that's Kenyon Sadiq. Let's get a star running back like Jeremiah Love. I think those options are more on the table than we initially thought, especially myself. I think the first 4 picks should be defense. And I don't think you should think twice about it, because the offense has plenty of talent on it and the defense needs youth. But I don't think the Vikings are going to approach it that way. As things sit right now, and free agency could completely change this, I'm going to go in with the mindset that they want a guy they can plug and play right away to help the offense. And is that going to be the right path? No. As things sit right now, Dave, I think that's the path that they're going to take. And that's how I'm going to approach this first round mock draft.
Hey, makes sense to me. If free agency, they hit up some of the defensive needs, then I could very well see KOC going offense in the first round. But it all depends on how the board falls.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Whenever I post a mock draft, everybody asks, well, why didn't you take a defensive tackle? Why didn't you take this? Why didn't you take that? That can be the tough part, because every time that I do a mock draft, I just don't input players. I will actually build it in the simulator. So when I do the Viking 7-round mock, I run it through the simulator. And more often than not, I can't take a defensive tackle that's worthy of being taken that I think the Vikings will take. Because I think Caden McDonald's a very good player. I don't think they're going to take a nose at 18, because I think they're fine with what their run defense was last year. And if you look at it, their run defense was 13th in the league. It wasn't a disaster. It felt like it at times, but it wasn't terrible. It was competent. And then they had the second ranked pass defense, which before they had the second ranked run defense. And it was the 28th ranked pass defense by yards per game. Some of that was because the Vikings jumped out. Oh, Dave, we have breaking news. Mike McCarthy is the new head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh,
that's
okay.
A shocker. Yeah. So obviously this is going to be happening about 56 hours away from when we're recording it. But hot damn, Brian Flores is officially returning. That is massive. But that now that we know that Brian Flores is officially returning, I think veteran additions on defense, and then if they're going to make additions on defense, I think you're going to see older players, more experienced guys. And that's why when I made the argument in that 3-round mock draft I did, Dave, that I don't think they'll take a corner early. It's because all the early corners are young. I think they'll take like a 23-year-old in round 3 who has a lot of playing experience rather than taking the high upside guy because of the aptitude needed to run this defense. They did that with Mekhi Blackmon at 102nd overall. He was 24. They did that with Kyrie Jackson. Rest in peace to him. He was 24 and a half when he was selected. I think that matters with how Brian Flores wants to play. So we'll see. But let's get this first round mock draft going because it's interesting. Hey, Marzipan, don't scratch the bed. There you go. Good girl.
All right.
She's happy about Brian Flores staying around too.
All right. Let's go. Welcome to Vikings First and SKOL's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick? And who's your favorite choice?
All right, let's get this thing rocking and rolling. So we're going to make it pretty easy here. Fernando Mendoza is going 1. I think that is essentially a foregone conclusion here. Mendoza at number 1. I think that matters. That matters a lot. Second, the Jets. They can kind of go anywhere here. You take a look at their needs. Quarterback would be ideal, but there's really not one worthy of going. I don't think there's another one truly worthy of going round 1. I think another team's going to force Ty Simpson, which I know. I think you could take Trinidad Chambliss at the back end of round 1, but that would be, hey, I prefer to have the 5th-year option for team control if he ends up being really good rather than just wait until round 2. But other than that, you're talking Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier. It's just, hey, we thought highly of these guys at one time, but they never lived up to it kind of picks. And that to me is like a Desmond Ridder pick in the 3rd round, like that happened in 22. Let's just see what we got. Let's bring him in the building and maybe we can maximize it. And if it doesn't work, well, I spend a 3rd round pick. It's okay. That's the kind of quarterback class we have here. The Jets, other than quarterback, wide receiver, D-line, linebacker, and cornerback, they're actually okay at edge rusher, which is pretty interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a talent, like just give them talent. And you could go a bunch of different directions. I think you could take Ruben Bain and move him inside because he's such a powerful player. The weight's not listed, but I think he's close to like 275, 280. And you could play him inside. Plus, his shorter arms, like you could argue that it's a benefit to have shorter arms on the interior because how you end up playing in the interior is so different than how you play on the outside. So I think Bain is an interesting option here. But I'm going to go wide receiver.
It's phone booth style.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we talk the guards and centers. They're fighting in the phone booth.
Yep. I'm going to go wide receiver here. And my wide receiver 1 is Mekhi Lemon from USC. And Lemon, Dave, we're going to, there's going to be some SKOL Search episodes coming out. I'm going to try and record a bunch for Dave before I leave for Mobile so we can still get you guys some good stuff. But Lemon is the oddest combination of Jordan Addison and Larry Fitzgerald, and I really can't explain it. He is 5'11", 195, so he's a little bit of a bulkier frame than Addison, but he is very smooth and calculator route runner. He's good after the catch. But then once he gets into these contested catch situations, he's he kind of plays like Fitzgerald, where he boxes you out, high points the ball. But Fitzgerald is like 6'3", 220. So they're not similar in that way at all. But the vibes, when I like to do comps, I like to do play style, because I don't want to just sit here and tell you that this guy is this guy, because I think that can be disingenuous. But how do they play? So you get a general sense of what that play style looks like. To me, Chris Bell, the wide receiver from Louisville, is an A.J. Brown clone. Now, will you ever get to the heights of A.J. Brown? Who the hell knows? But how they play, identical. Absolutely identical. And I think Lemon gives me those vibes of Addison paired with Larry Fitzgerald. And go watch him. He's awesome. He's my top wide receiver. And getting somebody opposite of Garrett Wilson, because when you're the Jets and you have all this draft capital, you got 2 first-round picks this year, 3 next year, you got 2 second-round picks this year. What should you do with all that capital? Load up and make things easier for when that quarterback comes into play. That's what the Vikings tried to do. And that just gave McCarthy the ability, hey, if you're somewhat average, this team can win like 12 games. Problem was he sucked most of the year. And then the injuries and starting a bunch of games with Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer didn't help either. So that was the big reason why. But they had an infrastructure set up to insulate a quarterback. And I think that's what the Jets should do. Insulate your next quarterback. Make it easier for them once they step into the league. Because a lot of times we see these top quarterbacks like Sam Darnold. Darnold was a disaster with the Jets. Why? They were terrible. The infrastructure was awful. You can't just throw a young quarterback into a bad situation and then all of a sudden expect them to, be just good. Sometimes they are. But when you have that kind of talent, make it easy for them. That's what the focus should be. All right, let's go on to the Arizona Cardinals. They need offensive line and quarterback, especially if they move on from Kyler Murray. Nobody really knows what they're going to do when it comes to Kyler Murray. And I think that's going to be a huge factor for the Arizona Cardinals and who they end up hiring. The rumors are that it's going to be Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator of the Rams. His brother Matt is obviously the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. So I'm going to go offensive line here. And I know these players are kind of ranked lower. I'm higher on Fano. I haven't watched all the tape yet, but I love what Fano brings to the table. And Maui Goa is also there as well. But Maui Goa, I think, is probably a better fit inside, even though I think he can play right tackle. And I think if you have to move him inside, it's not a disaster. It's fine. But I'm less confident about taking that guy at 3rd overall than I am, say, at 12th. Like, remember when Elijah Vera Tucker went 14th? Now, history tells me that I'm right, and I didn't love Elijah Vera Tucker. But with Vera Tucker, the thing was, hey, he can play tackle, but he's probably an all-pro at guard. That's the kind of player we were talking about. And I think Maui Goa is kind of in the same boat. I don't love taking that guy super high. Now, if you take him super high and he just becomes like a 6-time all-pro, it doesn't matter. But I think the risk reward for where you're picking is higher when you're taking a guy that you're likely to kick in the inside, because that guy is going to be easier to find the deeper you go into the draft. I'm not saying you can find a Pro Bowl kind of guy in round 6, but it's easier to find a guard than it is at tackle. And if you can get a tackle who can be a guy for you for years, then I think you should take him. And that's why we're going to go Spencer Fano. Now, Penei Sewell went, 5th or 6th overall when he was taken in that 21 draft? Sewell is already a multi-time All-Pro. That dude is the 2nd highest grade I've ever given to a player. The easiest evaluation of all time. You just knew he was going to be good. He went 5th. That tells you what this draft class looks like. This draft class is not great. This draft class is void of talent in comparison to past years. So Spencer Fano in that 21 class probably goes closer to the 20s. Maybe past a guy like Darisaw, who was 23rd overall. It was a very good O-line class that year. But those things matter when we're having these conversations, why we talk about how this is such a poor draft class. When you compare it to other draft classes, this is nothing. So Titans, desperate for anybody who can make a play. Any side of the ball. I think...
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You say it's poor, and I gather at the top end is it poor. But is it poor Not just at the top, but in the medium and the low end as well. Or is that more position specific?
I think it's on an overall level, the depth is poor. It's just not a good draft class. This is the kind of draft class where if you're going to, you don't want to have 12 picks. If you have 12 picks, package a couple day 3 picks up and move up for the guy you love. I think there are some deep position groups. I think wide receiver is relatively deep. I think cornerback is deep. But there are a lot of shallow groups. Quarterback is really shallow. Running back is shallow. Tight end has some intrigue, but it has like one higher end talent, and then you're talking late day 2 kind of guys right after that. So the cliff is steep. Offensive line, I think, has a huge cliff after the first few offensive tackles. Caden Proctor is one of your best offensive tackles. Dave, you might be able to move better than Caden Proctor, and you have a bad knee. Like, he is a not a great athlete. He's like 360 pounds at 6'7", but he gets whipped by speed. And you can get underneath him because he's so tall, and you can out leverage him. I don't love Caden Proctor, but if you can get his body, if you can get him down to like 330 and get him a little lighter on his feet and just transition some of the weight into like more core strength, I think he can be a really good player. He's a 5-star prospect, but he's always been able to play, I'm just bigger than you and I'm going to whip your ass. You can't do that in the NFL. You have to have a lot of technique. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to kind of look at from a team building perspective here with a guy like Proctor. He might be better inside, and that scares me. But the Titans, they need a bunch. They wouldn't need corner if they had kept Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I'm just saying. But overall, you take a look at all of these guys, just take the best playmakers. You want great playmakers. Arvell Reese, he's the archetype of Micah Parsons. I don't think he's Micah Parsons, but when you talk about usage and how the Packers use Micah Parsons, where they line him up off the ball, they'll line him up all over the place to maximize his ability as a pass rusher. Reese, I think you could use him a little bit more off ball than you do Parsons. When you talk about how to use a player, that's what Reese is. He's a linebacker, edge rusher hybrid who's going to continue to grow as a pass rusher. And he's one of the best playmakers in college football on the defensive side of the football. So take it and run. I think Robert Saleh will be able to use him, especially because he loves like more of the speed rusher type. And then he likes to have like a couple 3 techs on the inside. So I think you can use Reese in a variety of ways. I'm very excited to see him in a Robert Saleh defense. Giants, you got to figure out a way to maximize Jackson Dart. I still think this is too high, but I do know John Harbaugh, and this is how he likes to operate. Francis Mauigoa just makes all the sense in the world here because you will put him at right tackle, and they're going to use more of a gap style scheme because of what the impact Cam Scadaboo has and how you're going to want to utilize him and Jackson Dart. That's going to be where you're going to want to go because he's just going to phone booth you. He's not going to be a guy who's going to be great in zone. He'll phone booth you. And that's, I think, opposite of Andrew Thomas. You can have a guy who can move people off the line of scrimmage. So I don't love the value, but I do think they will play him at tackle and he would fit well at tackle there versus other places. Like if you were to be a tackle in Minnesota, I'd hate it because he'd have to have too high of movement skills. But in a phone booth setting, I think it's perfect. So the Browns, they need a little everything. I think offensive line could be in play here if Fano falls. I think Caleb Lomu could be in play, but I still think this is too high for him. So we're going to, the tough part is
coach.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, things are kind of weird in Cleveland right now, man. Top candidates are pulling out because apparently they're asking these guys to like write essays and shit. So I'm like, come on, it's a football head coach. If you can't get that kind of stuff from an interview, man, it'd be awesome to give him Ruben Bain, and just that defensive line is already so freaking good, but they fortified it last year with Mason Graham. Alex Wright just got an extension at the other edge rusher, and you have Myles Garrett, who's God incarnate. So give him a wide receiver. Keep it in state. Carnell Tate. He can be an X. He can be a Y. He can be in a Z. You can do everything with him. And Jerry Jeudy led the league in drops last year, but he's a good player. Just don't have him as your alpha. And I think Tate can grow into an alpha role with the Browns. They still need to replace everybody in the offensive line, but there wasn't anybody of value here. So we'll hopefully be able to get somebody at 24 that can come in and start day one. Now you have the Commanders. They desperately need edge rushers. Ruben Bain. I know the arm length is going to scare people off, and I don't love the arm length either. But at a certain point, an entire year of tape where he just whipped everybody's ass, that's got to mean something. And he was dominant in the national title game. I thought Indiana would win by 25. They won by 6. Why? Bain and Akeem Mesidor. Those two completely wrecked the Indiana offense enough to where they couldn't put up a lot of points.
Ruben Bain's the one with the 30-inch arms, right?
Yeah. I still don't love that.
Whereas you're wanting an edge to be well over 32. Minimum.
Yeah, 32 and a half is kind of that threshold. Dallas Turner's 34 and a half, which is really nice. And he knows how to use his arms for the speed to power and the long arm to be able to kind of maneuver around and mess with offensive tackles. So, yeah, it's at a certain point, the film is just so good, it doesn't matter. But it will always matter a little bit just because it gives you an inherent disadvantage, but that doesn't mean you can't overcome it. Teams will draft players with those kind of tools because it gives you an inherent advantage over somebody else. And that's kind of where I think we're at here with this kind of player. He doesn't have those inherent advantages, but he's just better than you and he knows it. And I think that matters. Marzipan is still shocked at that Mike McCarthy hiring. Just saying. Saints. This is where the first defensive tackle could come off the board, and that's where I want to go here with Peter Woods, but I think their defensive line is still good enough for right now. They actually found a quarterback in Tyler Shuck. Now, will it continue? I don't know, but he played really well at the end of last year, and I'm going to be honest. I was very surprised. I did not think that he was going to play that well. So, what do? Let's get a running mate for Chris Olave. They traded Rashid Shaheed, who they probably weren't going to be able to keep anyways. They got fourth and a fifth round pick for him because they wanted a third round pick value. They still need somebody to play opposite of him. So we're going to go Jordan Tyson. Tyson's weird. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. He tries to play like Justin Jefferson, but he needs to play more like a traditional X because of what his physical limitations are. He's not the kind of snappy route runner that Jefferson is. But he has the great body control, the great understanding of how to play the game, how to when to flatten her out, when to stem it more vertically based on the coverage. He has that kind of intelligence, but he does not play the game in the same way Jefferson does. He doesn't have that same kind of twitch. And I think if he adjusts some of the nuances with how he runs routes and really leans into the fact that he's got a strong frame, I think you are in a really good spot with him. And because he doesn't have to be an alpha, opposite of Chris Olave, and Olave played the first 16 games. He missed the final game with a non-concussion related injury. So that was huge because health is a huge factor in having questions about Chris Olave. So I think Tyson can be a really nice addition. Chiefs. Where do you go with the Chiefs, man? Holy crap. They need a little bit of everything. Take talent. Peter Woods. He can be the heir apparent to Chris Jones, and you can work him with Chris Jones. They love those big edge rushers, so David Bailey is not going to fit their archetype, which maybe they should stray away from their archetype because Karlaftis just got way overpaid. Felix Anudike-Uzomah is not very good. Maybe you should stray away from that, but they won't. It's Steve Spagnuolo. He's one of the best in the league. He's got a formula, and they're going to keep going with that. 10th, the Cincinnati Bengals.
You wouldn't give Bieniemy a running back?
I think it's certainly possible. Like Jeremiah Love is a real possibility there. Bieniemy going back there, I hate it because it just feels like you're doing more of the same. And you're not really getting new ideas in there. Unless Bieniemy pitched that, hey, I learned all this stuff from Ben Johnson. We're going to start using some of it. I feel like it's still going to be the same old shit, just different players kind of thing.
When he was there, the same old shit got him Super Bowl wins.
Yeah, but they also had a 33-year-old Travis Kelce, and he might not return next year. And I think that could end up really crushing the offense. I think they needed a full reset offensively. They needed to bring in somebody like a Mike McDaniel and just bring in new ideas and revitalize what you could do with Patrick Mahomes. That doesn't mean get rid of everything that Andy Reid likes to do, but I think you could have brought in a lot of new stuff. And my guess is that was the pitch from Bieniemy, where he spent that year with Ben Johnson and he learned a bunch of those kind of concepts to where now you can revitalize the Chiefs offense. I hope that's the case. But if you take Love, I think that would be the idea. But with how Clyde Edwards-Helaire bombed out when they took him in 2020, they may be a little gun shy about taking running back high. We'll see. 10th, Bengals. They desperately need playmakers, and especially on the defensive line. Might be a little high, but Caleb Banks, 6'6", 335, 35.5-inch arms, has real pass rush aptitude despite being a 335-pound defensive lineman. 7 sacks in 24. Missed all but 3 games in 25. He hurt his foot in the offseason, missed the first couple games. Then at LSU, he re-injured that foot, had surgery. And then when the Gators were 3-7, he returned for the final 2 games. And he played both those games. And that says a lot about his character when he knew that he was going to be going into the NFL draft. And I'm excited to see him at Mobile. But he didn't have to return for those games. He did anyways. I think that speaks volumes. Plus, they're so desperate for anybody in the interior in Cincinnati. I think Banks can be a really nice upside play.
Well, the question is, will he hold out until he gets the contract he wants with the guarantees like a normal team?
We'll see. Shamar Stewart caved, so that's going to be a really interesting play. Shamar Stewart got a little bit more, but he caved on pretty much everything that the Bengals wanted, which really sucks for this next guy. Mm-hmm. The Bengals their front office runs like crap. It's bad. Dolphins, wide receiver could be in play here, but I'm going to go cornerback. There's a lot of really interesting corners here. I think they'll go with a guy like Jermon McCoy. People will stay away from McCoy because he did not play in 2025. He tore his ACL in the college football playoffs, so December of 2024. He was cleared to return, but instead of putting 3 games of fresh off injury tape, he decided to sit him out. Nobody can blame him for that. Now he's going to go through the draft process fully healthy, be able to do all the testing, all the positional drills. And when you watch his sophomore tape, it's good. He's a ball hawk. He understands how to attack. He's a very smooth, athletic player. And I think you could potentially have a shutdown style corner with Jermon McCoy. Would have been nice to see him play his junior year, but the sophomore tape was so good that I think you can live without it and still feel comfortable because you're going to know that he's 100% healthy because you're going to get to see him do everything. This isn't where he got injured in October and you're going to have to wait it out. No, he's going to be able to do it all. 12, Dallas Cowboys. This is the player that I would love to fall to the Minnesota Vikings. Sonny Styles. This linebacker core in Dallas might be the worst position group in the league. You have to fix it. I wouldn't be shocked if they did Styles at 12 and CJ Allen at 20 and just say, you know what? We're fixing linebacker. Screw it. We need those guys now. Well, now they have one of them. Styles can come in and be a versatile player right away. And in Christian Parker's defense, we saw how good Zach Bond was. They took Jahad Campbell last year in the first round. So Vic Fangio does prioritize linebackers. Now you got Christian Parker coming in. This could be the start of something here with the Dallas Cowboys. 13, Los Angeles Rams. Offensive line and cornerback. Cornerback, they just never seem to care about drafting cornerbacks high. Let's fix that. We're going to give him Mansour Delane. Really good man cover style corner. He's physical, and I think he's a really talented player. I worry a little bit about the athleticism, where I think he might run like 4.5, and I think he's his recovery ability isn't quite up to par, but he does such a good job of staying in your hip pocket where the recovery isn't as much of an issue. I like Delane a lot. I think he's my cornerback 3. I don't think the Vikings will be interested in Delane because he's more of a man-style corner versus what they're playing with Brian Flores. So I think Delane might not be on their radar as much, but he's a damn good football player. 14, the Baltimore Ravens. They could use D-line. There's no D-line here, but they did just lose an edge rusher. So we're going to give him one, and we're going to give him David Bailey. David Bailey's a guy I think could go in the first round, and the Ravens have a history of, hey, guys should go higher. We're just going to take him now. Tyler Linderbaum was that guy. Kyle Hamilton was that guy. They always just take a guy, hey, you're falling, but you're really, really good at football. All right, we'll just take you and figure it out. And they did trade Odafe Owe away to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think Bailey could come in and kind of fill that role. 15, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. God, this team desperately needs a linebacker. So we're going to give him one. CJ Allen, Georgia. If you want, go check out the SKOL search. It just went live Saturday morning for all non-members. Dave put it out Friday night for all members. We're talking Sonny Styles, CJ Allen, and Anthony Hill Jr. You're going to want to go check that out. It's got a really nice breakdown of all 3 players. And if you become a member, you'll get them all these SKOL search episodes 12 hours before everybody else.
At least 12.
Yep. And this time it was about 16. Yeah. It's the good stuff, baby. So go like, subscribe, ring the bell for those notifications, and become a member. You'll help support the channel, and you get extra stuff, including in the Vikings First and SKOL Discord in the show notes. Click the link, and you can get access to the Rumor Mill channel, where I'll post all the juicy stuff that I hear throughout the course of the season and the offseason. All right. 16, back to New York Jets. We already took a really talented player in Mekhi Lemon, so we have the wide receiver. Linebacker's really not an option. D-line, if you could take Caden McDonald, but I'm not convinced that would be what the Jets want to do. So we're going to go back to cornerback. We're going to take my cornerback 1, Avion Terrell. I love this guy. People made fun of the Falcons when they took his brother AJ Terrell at 16th overall. Oh my gosh, you're reaching. Terrell is one of the top 5 corners in the league. Avion plays just like him and is built like him too. This guy is an absolute dog. He will kick your ass, throw you in a well, and lock it. Oh, and then he'll jump in and drop kick you before climbing back out. This dude plays the game exactly like how a corner should play. We talk about like Quincy Riley last year, how much I loved him. Talked about D'Angelo Pons, which I just recorded a SKOL search of him that Dave's going to put together here soon. He plays a very similar way, and it's a very similar size. And you know what? Aaron Glenn wasn't the biggest corner either. I think he's going to relate very well to Terrell and can really help maximize him. And now all of a sudden, you lose Sauce Gardner. They also traded Michael Carter, their nickel, away. Now you have a really talented corner to build around in Terrell. And you can play him inside. You can play him outside. I think that's a really interesting idea here. Here's where things get interesting. You have the Detroit Lions. They need offensive line. They need edge rusher. They need corner. They have 2 of the best safeties in the world. Do they take Caleb Downs? Would you take Caleb Downs here? Sometimes when you do these simulations, a guy like Downs can fall. Derwin James was drafted 17th. Kyle Hamilton went 14th. Safeties fall. He should go in the top 5 based on talent alone. As I kind of take a look at what my board is right now, I think Caleb Downs is my number 1 overall player. And he is by 0.1 points over Jeremiah Love and 0.2 over Mekhi Lemon and Sonny Styles. Like, this is a really good football player. Would Dan Campbell just say screw it and take him anyways? To me, that's a fascinating question. But they so desperately need any kind of pass rush opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Keldrick Falk, he fits their body type. He fits their likes. He fits everything kind of they want to do. So we're going to go Falk there for the Detroit Lions. Now the Vikings have a chance to take Downs. I think they would consider it. I wonder how gun shy they will be with a player like Lewis Seen kind of faltering, even though the reasons Seen failed have nothing to do with Downs. But sometimes front offices will get gun shy because they did one thing, they tried it and it didn't work. And it's hard to do that. And something I'd love to ask Kwesi, when it comes to data, you don't want to completely change your philosophy based on a small data set, which Lewis seen failing. It's a very small data set, but it's the NFL draft. You only get so many bites at the apple before you get fired, where you kind of have to consider taking a small data set and completely changing everything because of it. And that's why there are some really good drafters and some really poor drafters. I think Kwesi has not been a great drafter, but he gets too much shit. He's better than people want to give him credit for, but there are serious issues there. But I think when you look at his draft history, he's improved the process of how they go about taking players.
Would Brian Flores want Caleb Downs?
I'd have to talk to him. Like, I think Caleb Downs is a very high football IQ. I think he's very smart. He's a great communicator on the back end. He runs that Matt Patricia defense in Columbus. I think this would be a type of player that Brian Flores would want. Am I completely sold on that? No. Because he has shown he wants the veterans.
Harrison Smith doesn't come back.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing with safety. And this is where the entire draft really comes into play too, Dave. Safety is really good in round 2. So you could get a good starting caliber safety in year 1 at 49. But if you pass on a corner here, or you pass on a defensive lineman, or you pass on Jeremiah Love, you might not get a guy worthy of pick 49 at those spots. And that's where it becomes a more difficult conundrum too, because you have to think about what's coming next, not just about what's here now. Because if you take a safety here, but then all the safeties are at 49 and you like those guys too, well, you just kind of screwed the pooch a little bit. And
unless we talked about development and how B-Flow likes his system is very intelligent based, and you've got to live up, and there's been a lack of development. And we remember beginning of last season how everybody was hyping Theo Jackson and thinking he was going to be the guy. And then by the end of the year, it was Jay Ward. And Theo Jackson was losing snaps. So I'm just curious if he says, yes, I want Caleb Downs, assuming Hitman's not back, especially. And then if there's one at 49 to double up.
Mm-hmm. You could, but I think the 3 safety thing to me was a means to an end, because that's just the talent that they had. If you take safety at 18 and then take safety at 49, then you're intentionally committing to running 3 safeties on a regular basis, because you have Josh Metellus under contract for the next 3 years. I question whether that would be what Brian Flores wants to do, because this year they barely ran 3 safeties at all. How much of that, and this is where the difficulty lies, how much of that is a want versus you just didn't have the personnel to do it? And quite frankly, I don't have the answer to that question. My guess is Flores does not want to always run 3 safeties, but he will when he has the dudes to do it. I think 2 safeties back to back, and it's, especially because we talked about Brian Flores and veterans, I would struggle with 2 safeties back to back. But I also understand it because the talent is just there. But when I look at it, it would be really hard to just pass on Caleb Downs because I think he's that good. I think you could get a Derwin James type player here. So I'm going to take him. But I want to look at this.
I think Denzel Love's still sitting there.
I think Love is a serious option. I think Denzel Boston would be a serious option. Vega Ione, I don't think would be an option because he's a guard. I don't think he's got center flexibility, and I could be wrong. Kenyon Sadiq is an option. Casey Concepcion, that's a guy to watch for. Explosive with the ball in his hands. He's my wide receiver 3. I have him over Boston. I have him over Jordan Tyson. I love his game, and I think he can do a lot of great things for you. including the return game, which is also a valuable thing. Kristen Miller would be an option, especially if he blows up the combine.
Concepcion may be the guy if we trade Jordan Addison to the 49ers.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Concepcion. Very, very talented football player. And he's a little bit bigger than Addison in the weight department, too. Displays great body control. You know, Justin Jefferson will like jump up and then he'll like twist and he's always in control, like a snowboarder. Yeah, he's got that, too. We're going to take downs here. It just, you get lucky. Take it and run. Panthers, the funniest pick would be to take Denzel Boston because they took Xavier Legette, who's an X. They took Tet McMillan, who's an X. Now they take Denzel Boston and just have the trio of terror with just big receivers. And Jalen Coker is not a small guy either, but he can play in the slot. I think this would be a Caden McDonald spot because you have Derek Brown, who's just a force as like a 3 tech. He's more of a nose, but he's kind of like a Dexter Lawrence style nose tackle where he's a menace as a pass rusher. So they kind of use him that way. Now you have a beefy boy in the middle who can eat up all those blocks and let Derek Brown get singled out. I think that would work really, really well. Cowboys. They got the linebacker. What is Jerry Jones?
Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, they are. What does Jerry Jones love more than a first-round running back? Emmitt Smith worked out real well. Felix Jones was a mixed bag. Then they acquired Darren McFadden, who also was a former first-round running back. And they took Ezekiel Elliott first round. Jerry's not going to be able to help himself. Not going to be able to help himself.
To answer your question, what does he love more? Attention.
Oh, absolutely. What gets him attention? A Notre Dame running back, baby. Yep. Steelers, they did just hire Mike McCarthy. They're going to want to go more West Coast kind of stuff. I would love Boston here because I think you could have like 2 big-bodied receivers who can just mess with you. But in that offense, you're going to need a wide receiver. And you're going to need a twitchy one. Casey Concepcion, I think would be great. Chris Bell is a guy I would have an idea here because remember how good DK Metcalf and AJ Brown were at Ole Miss? Well, Chris Bell's AJ Brown, baby. So that's something you could look at. Chargers, O-line, D-line, trenches. Vega Ione. Plug and play. You're going to get both tackles back healthy. And now you have a third guy you can hopefully count on. Add Tyler Linderbaum in free agency. Figure out a guy to play that other offensive guard spot. You're cooking with gas. Eagles, 23rd overall. They're going to lose out on Dallas Goedert. They're probably going to cut him. Kenyon Sadiq. I don't love taking tight ends here, but Howie Roseman understands talent. He also knows how to use tools available to him like the consensus board. Hey, there is wisdom in crowds. If everybody else thinks that this guy is worthy of the spot, well, if I'm wavering on it, maybe I can default to the crowd. Howie has talked about using the consensus board in their decision-making process because when you're a data scientist, there is real wisdom in crowds because it's like when we talk about refs, the 100 drunks in a bar theory. If they all think it wasn't a catch, well, then it probably wasn't a catch kind of thing. That's where the consensus board comes into play. Now, offensive line needs to be a focus here. And this guy you may not have heard, but he's very good. Monroe Freeling. He had a great end of the year for the Bulldogs and maximized a lot of what he was able to do. Now, I think it might be a little high for him, but he's going to be a fast riser. He's a hyper athlete. And you could put him at either left tackle or right tackle and feel pretty good about it. They need to replace potentially all 5 guys. So get a guy that you feel good about. I think Freeling's got far and away the biggest upside. Bears. The Bears. Oh, the Bears. D-line. Kristen Miller's the only guy left. I don't love the linebacker options here. I don't love the safety options. And quite frankly, there isn't like a guaranteed like this guy's going to be really good. Cassius Howell is going to be too small for Dennis Allen, what he wants out of an edge rusher. So we are going to go Kristen Miller, gap shooting defensive tackle. Think along the lines of kind of like what Sharif Floyd was for the Vikings. Is a true 3 tech. Get him in there, rock and roll. Bills, Denzel Boston. They need a vertical guy. This is like Gabe Davis. If Gabe Davis was a real, like a great athlete, think Boston could still use a little bit of development with some of his breaking routes. I love what he brings to the table. San Francisco 49ers. They could use wide receiver, guard, edge rusher, safety. Cassius Howell. I think he fits that edge rusher need. And with that Robert Saleh style defense, I'm not sure who's going to take over. But if you still run the same system, then Howell fits exactly what you want as an edge rusher. Kind of small, but attacks. And I like what he brings to the table there. Texans, 28th overall. Interior, they need offensive line help. I think Caden Proctor could be a really interesting option. I'm going to go Caleb Lomu because now you get a left tackle in there. You could kick Ursary into guard where I think he might be better than tackle. And you just took Ursary in the second round last year. So you have Ursary, you kick him inside, you put Caleb Lomu left tackle, and now you feel a lot better about that offensive line, which had a lot of issues last year. And Ed Ingram's a free agent. I think Jared Patterson's a free agent. You're taking a step forward. And they have multiple second-round picks because of the Laramie Tunsil trade. I think they have the Commanders' third-round pick as well. So there are different things that they can do here. Rams, this is where I think you could get interesting with quarterback. I think Ty Simpson behind Matthew Stafford could learn and develop, but I think they're going to like Trinidad Chambliss better. I'm going to go quarterback here for them. I love Chambliss. He kind of has that Baker Mayfield type moxie. He doesn't quite have the piss missile of an arm, but he's got a good arm. He throws well on the move, and his best throws have come under pressure and under duress. Big boy NFL type stuff. And you don't have to play him right away because you have Matthew Stafford, but he's not long for the tooth either. He's 37 years old. There was already talks that he might retire before the season, but I think they cloned him. So that's why you see Matthew Stafford playing so well. I'm obviously kidding, but the red light stuff that they brought in, I don't know if it was a hyperbaric chamber or whatever, but whatever they did.
The special trailer that he for his back and all that. Yeah.
30th overall. Offensive line, it would be nice to get some young players here. I don't love the idea of Caden Proctor protecting Drake May. I think edge rusher is a humongous need for them. And Mesidor's good, but I'm going R. Mason Thomas. He's got some shorter arms, but man, this guy is a violent run defender. He's an explosive pass rusher, and I don't think he's a true designated pass rusher like other people will. I think you can really play him on all three downs, especially in that type of system when you have beefy guys in the interior and he's more of a stand-up player. I think R. Mason Thomas would be a really nice addition. Now, the Broncos, there's really nobody of dire need that would be available to them here. So what do? Take a premium position and don't think twice about it. I'm going to take Keith Abney. I think he's better than Colton Hood. I think he's better than Brandon Sissy, who I don't really like at all. Plus, I've heard some things about Sissy that aren't necessarily the most flattering when it comes to the on-field performance. So I'm going to stay away there. 32, the Seattle Seahawks. Linebacker would be nice, but no options. Interior offensive line, sure. Running back could be interesting, especially if they don't keep Kenneth Walker III, who I'm watching out for the Vikings. I would love him. Take a look at cornerback. I think the way they like to play, I think that you have Devin Witherspoon, you can play outside, he can play inside. You have Josh Jobe and Rick Wallen. Both of them could be on their way out. Let's get a guy who just not somebody to mess with. Pons might be a smidge early here. D'Angelo Pons. That guy will kick ass and take names, and he will whip your butt. So taking a look here at the results of this mock draft, I will turn my zoom down a little bit so you guys can see the whole picture. There's our mock draft. And, this is just kind of off the cuff trying to figure out, hey, what makes sense based on what happens. I think there's a few fits here that would probably still happen come April. A few of them probably won't at all. And we're going to see a lot of change, especially at the back end of the round. Once we get done with athletic testing, once we start to hear more about the players, the personalities from insiders and scouts, I think that this is a good basis for where things could end up. But still a lot of question marks and a lot of stuff. It's like, there's no way this guy goes there. There's no way this guy falls. We really just don't know. So it's just another fun exercise. And if Caleb Downs fell to 18, the Vikings took him, hell yeah, that rules. Let's go.
And we know people are going to get hyped because opinions are going to change because we have the Shrine Bowl, which they've already started practicing. We have the Senior Bowl starting up this week. There's a few more All-Star games, and then we have the Combine. And they will all affect how people think about these players.
Yes, and that's a big thing. Plus, free agency is going to change a lot of needs for teams. So let us know what you think. It's a very interesting mock draft. There's not exactly a hardcore, this has to happen, this should happen. It's exploring options, exploring different ideas, and taking that and trying to see what could happen. Like, is Mekhi Lemon going to go second overall? Probably not. Is Caleb Banks and Peter Woods going to go top 10? Maybe. Are we going to see Caleb Downs fall to 18? I doubt it. Jeremiah Love to 20? I mean, it's possible, I guess. This is just all about exploring different situations and how to attack and how it could happen if it falls like this. And that's what mock draft should be right now. Exercises. And say, hey, if this happens, and then how does that affect this and that? And that's what we're handling right now. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, like, subscribe, ring the bell. We're going to try to have another show for you later this week. Dave and I will still need to figure that out because it's all going to be determined based on what my availability is throughout the week, because it could be a little weird with how they've changed practice times. So as soon as we know, we will let you know. But thank you guys so much for joining us here on a Monday night. And sorry we couldn't interact live, but Dave will probably be in the comments and I will try to be as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy Senior Bowl week. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at @TheRealForno. I'll have a lot of stuff coming for you. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!